I've been with LASR for 24 years. I certified my first dog in 2001, and currently I'm training a dog. We're in between having certified dogs and training dogs, because unfortunately dogs don't live as long as we do. And so the pictures here, you'll see that we have a lot of teams in training. So just a quick background, LASR is not all canine and canine handlers. The majority of the team are grid searchers, we affectionately call ground pounders. We have a really good connection with them. When I started with LASR, I had never even seen a topographical map. So, you know, all my education around navigation came from our ground pounders. And they come and hide for us, and we do some joint trainings together. So in the state of New York, the DEC Rangers have legal jurisdiction for all inland search and rescue missions. So LASR does not self-deploy. We work for the Rangers. They call us out when they need us. They tell us where they want us to go, and that's what we do. We have occasionally, the canine team has been called out by local law enforcement, but pretty much it's the DEC Rangers. So the first thing I want to tell you about dogs is, so you all see the cop shows on TV, right? And you see the dogs, they got their nose to the ground, and they're doing, you know, either tracking footprint to footprint, or what we call trailing, which is they may be a little ways, maybe up to 300 feet off of the footstep, but they're catching that scent as the wind moves it. So our dogs are air scent dogs. The tracking and trailing dogs work on a lead. Our dogs work off leash, and they're able to cover a lot more ground than we can. They are not scent specific, so we do not have to have an item of clothing of the person that's lost. Our air scent dogs are going to find anybody who's out in front of us in that wilderness area. So air scent dogs are not useful in an urban park setting because they're not scent discriminatory, and you have all these people around. The Rangers usually work the first operational period, which is 12 hours, before they start thinking about calling the local volunteers out. It goes into more days. It goes to the Federation of New York State Federation of Search and Rescue has about 24 teams across the state. It's all volunteers, so people come when they can. But the reason why the tracking and trailing dogs aren't as useful is because when somebody gets lost, usually their friends or their family look for them. And then when they can't find them, they call the police. And the police come and they look, and then it goes to the Rangers and they look. And then, you know, you may have some weather intervening. So those tracks that are laid down become very contaminated or even washed away. With the air scent dog, we're looking for the scent that comes directly off of a person. So as we're all sitting here, we're all shedding skin rafts, which look like miniature cornflakes. And those skin rafts have bacteria on them. And so right now, we're all shedding 40,000 a minute. Yep, 40,000 a minute. And so because of our body heat, they tend to kind of go up first, and then they get caught by the breeze, and away they go. So there's no getting rid of that. You know, if somebody is in our assigned area, that scent's going to be there no matter whether it's rained or, you know, snowed or whatever. It's going to be there. So Lily said she was really interested in the bond between animals, dogs and their handlers. That bond is the basis for what we do. Without that, we have nothing. So if somebody gets a new puppy, we say, you know, spend a week with them, building that bond. before we start our first training exercise, which you can start very early. And I'm just going to spin this around so that I've got an illustration here. So, like my people, the dog was the hardest part. It doesn't look like a dog, it looks like a cow.
It's an aerial view, it's good, it's good. I can see a dog there.
So dogs do what they do pretty much instinctually. You will see a dog that is not trained for search and rescue that will, track something, or that will air scent a squirrel or whatever. So basically what we do is we pair two commands to that behavior: find them and show me. So this is kind of an illustration of our very first training exercise. What we do is set the problem up so that the wind is coming directly towards the canine. We have somebody else handle the dog, not the owner, because the owner has built that bond, and that's what we're going to work on in this exercise. So that owner is going to sort of jazz the dog up as the other person holds them. The other person holding them is not correcting them for leaping forward. There's no restraint on the collar. They're down on their knees with that arm in front of the dog's chest and their head back like this, so that when the dog jumps, they don't get knocked in the head. And so the owner will run in a half circle and duck down, half hidden behind a tree and half not. The person handling the dog is going to release the dog just before the owner's motion stops. They're going to release them with the command, find them, or some people use search or whatever. So if you've ever thrown a tennis ball for a dog, you know that if he sees it, he goes and gets it if he sees it moving. But if he's looking this way and you throw it that way, you're looking at it and going, well, can't you see it? And the dog is trying to find it with his nose, because they don't see like we do. So if something's in motion, then they are going to cue in on that. But they don't see colors like we do. So that's why the person is going to release just before the owner's motion ceases. So we've kind of engaged the dog's prey drive, because somebody's running, and it's pack drive also because that's their person. That's a person that feeds them and plays with them. So they're going to run straight for the person. They are not going to track and trail unless we set the problem up wrong. So in a real search, if a dog makes a find by tracking and trailing or air scenting, it doesn't matter if they found the person, right? So occasionally, in an air setting problem, if the dog catches the track right, close to where the person is, they may run with their nose down. But this exercise we use to let the dog know this is what we're looking for, the nose up in the air, not down on the ground. So then that exercise is done several times a week. We do three in a row, and it takes like 15 minutes. So your initial training, is very short. And then after about 3 weeks, the owner becomes handler. The dog understands the find 'em command. You still have the motion, so you're engaging the prey drive, and then we continue that exercise. And then as the canine progresses, we let them see the person running away, and then we turn their heads. So now they don't see the motion, and now they are strictly going to locate the person by their nose. And that's really fun to see when they start. So this is the scent cone. Remember I was talking about the rasp? So although the scent is small at the person, it's actually bigger, farther away from the person. I mean, there's a point at which, of course, it dissipates and it's gone. But it's not unusual for our dogs to make a find where the person's 300 to 500 feet away. Excuse me. So then after the turning the head exercise, then we begin to put somebody in where the canine hasn't even seen them go in. And so then they learn, okay, if I'm in an area and I haven't seen a person, there's still someone out here. The dogs can sometimes hang up in that place. And so if they do, what we'll do is have the person that's hiding either pop up so the dog sees the motion, or pop up and make a sound, because you want the dog to be successful. And they eventually do learn that if I've been given the find or search command, there's somebody out there for me to find. So then comes the recall, refine training, and this is what has to be bomb-proof. The dogs work off leash, and so they're covering a lot more ground than us, and they can make a find out of our sight. We do train, at night, but even just in the daytime, if they're 300 or 500 feet away from us, we're not going to see that they found the person. So they have to have a way to communicate that to us. We call that the trained indication, or TFR, trained final response. And people train different things for that. We try to look at the dog and see what behaviors, they easily offer. So one dog might have a bark alert. Doug's dog is doing a bark alert. Other dogs may do a bump. They jump up on their handler when they come back after they've found somebody. Then we have dogs that will bite a ball or a rope toy that hangs off the person's pack. And so at that point, the dog has communicated that he has made the find, and so then the next command is show me, and the dog has to take the handler back in. It's really fascinating. I mean, it's just, I love watching my dog work, obviously, but even watching other dogs work, it's pretty amazing. It's kind of magical because, we can't smell what they smell. So the New York State Federation of Search and Rescue finally got all of the teams across the state to agree on standards for the canines, and this happened 10, 15 years ago, maybe. So I'm going to tell you about the certification test. I really am impressed by these, and they were in place on our team, on LASR's team, before I ever got to the team. My first dog and another woman whose name was Karen, they were the first dogs that were certified on the team, but the team had standards before we even got to the team. These standards are really important. You do sometimes have people show up at searches and say, oh, well, my dog can find this person. But the certification tests, keep us honest. And they're not just for testing the dog, they test the handler as well. So the first 3 tests are on-team tests. So any certified handler can, on the team, can then test up and coming handlers. The first test is a half to 3/4 of a mile off trail. So that's not trailing like we were talking about with the nose down. But the rangers typically in their first operational period will do what we call hasty searches. So they're running trails or going to what we call attractive nuisances, fire tower, water. So this is sort of a hasty. The subject, it's very specific how the test is set up. The person hiding, we used Bob for Doug's certification test just a little bit ago. They can't walk up or down the trail. They have to cross the trail once to get into their hiding place. They have to be completely hidden from view. So Bob was down on a tarp with a Z-rest, and he had brush over top of the tarp, so he was not visible at all. And the subject has to be within 30 feet of the trail. You're not clearing the area in this type of a hasty search. You're just clearing about 30 feet to either side of the trail. For the trail test, if the wind is above 4 miles an hour, the person has to be hidden on the upwind side of the trail. So the next test is a 30-acre heavy brush, and that test is to demonstrate that the dog will go through the brush. We don't want them skirting it or missing scent or choosing to ignore it because of the terrain, the heaviness of the brush. The 30-acre heavy brush tests the handler's navigation skills. It's the one test that a handler cannot use a GPS on. They use a map and a compass, and they use either a clicker or ranger beads. You don't have your ranger beads on. To pace so that they know where they are when they're making their sweeps in that 30-acre area. Because once they find the person, it's not over then. They have to be able to locate where they are on the map to the person testing. Because if you find somebody and you need help getting them out, you gotta be able to tell people where you are, or if you need, medics to get in there, people with a EMT or paramedic, you got to be able to tell them where you are. So the 20-acre walking subject is meant to demonstrate that your dog will find somebody who's still up and moving, trying to get themselves unlost. So in the 20-acre walking subject, we have a person walking. They're kind of restricted to a 1-acre area in that 20 acres. And the test is set up so that the dog will get into them within the first 3 sweeps. Because we've already done the 30-acre, heavy brush thing. This is meant just to demonstrate that the dog will realize that somebody walking can be it. So once the dog gets to the person, the hiding subject has to walk in the direction opposite the way that the dog goes back to the handler. So then it's a bounce back. So whatever the dog does at the handler, the bark, the bite, the toy, he goes back to the place where he last saw the person. Then he's got to, and he's going to track, because that's going to be a hot track. He's going to go back to the person, and he's just going to bounce until the handler's able to close the distance.
Cool.
So the 2 off-team tests are done by New York State Federation evaluators. So there's some objectivity. It's not your teammate that's testing you. And the first one is a 40-acre night search. And I remember when I was first looking at the certification test, I was like, oh, 4-acre night. Actually, the scenting conditions at night are better than they are in the daytime. I think I did one of my night tests in 20 minutes.
Wow.
So, the handler's job is to learn scent theory. It's the handler's job to put the dog's nose every place that it needs to be in order to pick up scent. In order to do that, they have to understand how scent travels, what affects scent. So your terrain, the heavy brush, if it's a ravine, scent sometimes is like water. So if you have a ravine or a roadway, you know, that scent may just run down that. So bright sunshine overhead, no clouds, can set up a situation where the scent chimneys and it'll go up and then eventually it'll disperse and come down. But if you think of like a willow tree, you know, there's that place where the dog gets scent, but then when they continue on, there is no scent until they get into the person. So in situations like that, you know, the handler, it's up to the handler to look at the terrain, to figure out what's going on with the scent, and to put their dog into the place where he can finish that problem. The last test is a 100-acre, multiple subject. A lot of the teams, including LASR, before the Federation standards were put in place for all of the teams, this last test was 160 acres. So that's what I did with my first dog. So it used to be that there were 2 subjects hidden. And the reason for that is because your dog had to show a willingness to go back to work after the first one. Because you could find another hiker, you could find a berry picker, you could find a fisherman, anybody who's not who's not the person you're looking for. And the dog has to be willing to go back to work. So the number unknown is because people would do the test and they'd find 2 people and then that was it, they were done. So they hadn't really demonstrated whether they were physically fit enough to do a 100-acre search and whether their dog was. So now it's unknown number of subjects and therefore you have to work the whole area. And that really sort of simulates a real search, because when you're given your area, the person might be in it, but they might not. Yeah. And so after a team has worked, whether it's ground pounders or, you know, canine, we go back and debrief with the rangers, and we have to give them a probability of detection in a percentage. So with our grid teams, their coverage is going to be in the 90s, right, Bob?
You can see well, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas a dog's coverage, is gonna fall somewhere in the 60% range. There were a lot of studies done on factories and pollution and how stuff dissipated from chimneys, and that's where a lot of our scent theory comes from. William Sire-Tuck's book, Scent and the Scenting Dog, goes through a lot of that. But having done that 100-acre test, I think helps to give the handler the confidence to be able to go in and do the debriefing, and feel assured that they've done what they needed to do in their area. So this is something I really like. The dog is neither tool nor toy. You are partners giving each other advice. Each brings something to the work that the other doesn't have and cannot do alone. So that's for you, Lily. I'm gonna send Doug out because he has his dog here, and they're gonna do a demo of the runaway. But we're gonna do some Q&A first while he's getting Zoe. Any questions?
How does the dog
Would you like to come sit down?
learn to associate, as you keep saying, scent, to go find someone, or is that just instinctual? Like, how do they know to go find someone from scent?
So it's really that initial exercise that we set up, where the dog learns to, kind of put those things together.
The association is what I suppose I'm curious. Like, how do they know that?
Setting it up so that they're not tracking and trailing. They have their head up because they've seen motion. And we've set it up, I probably omitted this when I first, was talking about it. But you set up the problem so that the wind is coming from the person to the dog. So when their head's up, they're getting the scent of that person. If you've ever watched a hunting dog, or your dog in the backyard hunting a squirrel, what they do is they will work till they come into scent. And they give them what we call a scent cone. And they will begin, they hit that, oh, lost scent. Oh, lost scent. Lost scent. And they flip around till they get to the person. So just setting up that, they're going to go after their owner. Prey drive, pack drive, they're gonna do it. And so when they do it, and the wind's coming straight towards them, and they get that scent, and it is paired with the find and command.
All
So
these
that is
dogs
over
seem
and
to
over.
love to please, and it's just, they get so much energy. They just want it, and this is what they've been trained to do. So they're just out there to do it. It's their excitement. They're so excited.
It's a
to go do
game.
it. Yeah.
For us, search is an emergency, and it might be life or death. But for the dogs, it's all a game, and it's a big game of hide and seek. And it's intentionally that way. I mean, we want it to be the thing, that they live for. And at our trainings, we'll work one dog at a time. The other dogs will be in the owner's cars, and we'll have one person in the parking lot, watching over the dogs. The rest of the dogs are going crazy when they can hear, the reward for another dog, making a find. They're like, let me out, let me, do the game.
Are there certain dog breeds that are better cut out for this work? Or like, what do you typically work with?
So you can't use brachiocephalic dogs like pugs, that have the, really short nose, smushed in faces. They are not a breed that you're gonna use for search and rescue. So you want a dog that's large enough to cover the territory. He doesn't have to be huge because you also need to think about, like, if my dog injures themselves, can I carry him out of the woods? So you don't want them huge. Having a double-coated dog is a real plus because it helps them in the brush. It also helps keep them cool in the summer and warm in the winter. So your German Shepherds. So each of the breeds has their strength and weakness. So German Shepherds are typically so bent on pleasing. They also want to be pretty close to their handler. So with a German Shepherd, we will have to usually work with them to get them to range out away from their handler, because that's what you want, you know, you want the dog to be covering, you know, more than you are. And then some dogs will, you know, range too far. And so we'll have the owner hide behind a tree. And then the dog learns that, oh, you know, I really should, you know, come back and check in with the handler every now and then. So German Shepherds, Border Collies, Golden Retrievers, Labs, Airedales. What am I missing?
Not many.
That's the current thing.
Yeah. So a lot of dogs can. What you really are looking for in the dog is a very strong play drive, because it is play for them. You know, they're working to get, you know, that reward at the end. And for some dogs, it's actually, it's not just the reward at the end, it's the hunt. I think that's true of my dog, Snaredale. He loves the hunt.
It's fun hiding too, because you keep one eye open, you know, buried, wherever you're buried, you can watch the dog usually. Sometimes they don't, they come from behind you, so you don't even hear them come until you get a foot on your chest. But a lot of times you can see them working the area, and it's all nose. It's
Yeah.
no, there is no, they are not, I could be sitting there in bright orange and they won't look at me.
As long as you don't move,
Right.
they will not see you.
Right.
When you move and they're looking in that direction.
Right, then they'll see you, but nose down, going, and you can see, just like the cone is there, they go outside, and they're going, wait a minute, and they go back, and
Yeah.
then next thing you know, they're right at you.
How much faster than humans can dogs detect motion?
I think it's a secondary for a dog. It's smell primary.
Their sense that's primary to them is scent. I think ours is vision.
Yes.
That kind of brings up an interesting thing, sort of tangentially related. Dogs cue in so much on our body language that we're not even aware of. So that's one of the things we have to be really careful with. You know, initially in the initial training sessions, we know when the dog has been into the hidden person and they come back to do their indication. If we're always doing the same thing when they come back, then we can be cueing them for an indication, which means it's going to fall apart in a real search, because there won't be somebody on the radio saying, hey, he found me. So that's one thing that, you know, you either have to consistently, when the dog comes back, always stand still and not do anything else, or you have to train for, no matter what I'm doing, you're going to give an indication. So, and people do like different things. They make different choices for that. I like to train so that my dog will, you know, he bites a ball at my waist, that he'll do it if I'm kneeling down tying my food, or, you know, if I'm getting into my pack or I'm looking at my map, that he'll still do that indication.
Okay, I have 3 questions.
Okay.
My first question is, so I have an aunt who has a guide dog who they call a career change dog because she didn't make it through guide school. So what % of dogs are able to pass these certification tests and be helpers?
I think that what I see is that it comes down more to what percentage of handlers
Commit.
commit.
Okay.
Because in the 24 years that I've been with LASR, and I started with my, you know, puppy brand new, and so Karen and I both certified our dogs. Her final certification test was in September of 2001, and mine was in December of 2001. So there's those two. Then there's Sally's dog Sally got involved with us because she was a photographer, amateur photographer, and we asked her to take some pictures of the dogs because the dogs had found somebody and we wanted to be able to, you know, respond to them with, or their families with photos. So Sally got really interested in what we were doing and ended up training a search dog herself. And then we had Paul with his chocolate lab, so that's 4. And then Karen did a second dog, Riley. So in 24 years, we've had 5. But I can tell, you know, when you think about how many people have come and gone that have put in 3 months, you know, a year, 2 years, it's usually, not always, but it's usually the handler that doesn't quite make it.
3 years to get a dog trained is a good.
About for a new handler, about 2.5. And there's now a federation rule that no dog will be fielded before they're 18 months old. We talk about puppy brain. You know, the dog will go, they'll find somebody, they'll be coming back to you, and then there's a stream, and they'll go get in the water, which is fine, you know, if they're hot, as long as they then get out of the water and come back and tell you that they've found. But puppy brain, sometimes, you know, they get in the water and then it's gone.
Yeah.
But a dog now, depending upon how big the breed is, how many years can they do it until they get too old, bad hips, whatever.
Yeah.
Now 7 years.
Yeah, you might get 7.
So you've
7
only got a
years.
few years of usefulness of the dog.
Yeah.
Once they're trained. So it's a huge commitment.
It is. And then you have to, you know, decide whether you're going to, you know, get a puppy while you still have the other dog, and how are you going to feel about walking out of the house, you know, with your backpack and the clothes that your dog, like I put on a certain pair of pants, like I don't wear these for searches or training, cotton kills. And so my dog knows when we're going out to train by my clothing. So, you know, you're gonna get another dog before your dog passes and watch them cringe while you walk out the door with the puppy.
I have.
I found the training that you explained understandable and fascinating. I may have missed this, but how does that get practically applied when someone is being sought?
Okay, so the rangers are the ones that that do what we call incident command. So they will have interviewed the person's family or friends, whoever they were with, to get an idea of the point last seen, where the person was last seen. And then they're going to develop areas that they want searched.
But I think my more specific question, do they provide a scent of the subject?
No. So the air scent dogs don't, aren't scent specific, and they're gonna find anybody in the area in front of them.
So the ranger has to make best use of the dog, has to have a pretty good idea of a sector at least to begin with.
So they will, in their map, they will have A through K or L of
Grids.
sections,
Yeah.
and they will send grid teams out to work those, and then canines also. And they will prioritize when they do their planning. They will have areas that they believe are higher probability, POA, probability of area, for the subject. It's very interesting what they do. They do it very well. But they will look at decision points on trails, you know, terrain. You know, a ravine will funnel somebody, and there's also lost person behavior, which is fascinating. Robert Kester, you know, kept statistics and still does of lost person behavior. So, you know, you can predict, obviously not with 100% surety, but you know, if somebody's suicidal, they're gonna be at a place where they can overlook either, you know, it's a nice view or it's water, and they're gonna be within
Actually, it used to be within 1 mile, now it's in half a mile.
half a mile of the place last seen. Hunters are typically gonna go up if they get lost to try, you know, and see. Children are gonna take, you know, the easiest route.
As a hiker, I've been trained, I've never gotten lost, but I've been told that when you're satisfied that you are indeed lost, you serve yourself as well to just stay.
Yep.
A stationary object is a lot easier to find than a moving object.
Right.
And we teach that,
Kids.
But a panicky person might, oh, I think it's this way. Oh, no, it's not, it's this way. That makes it
If you can
compound.
backtrack and find where you screwed up, great. But
Yeah.
once you've done that, and you're still screwed up. Yeah.
sit down.
I have a bright orange garbage bag I keep in my backpack for a poncho and/or to make it very obvious so a helicopter could see me if.
Right, I'm
needed.
aware of that too. But I'm
People become
pleased
so
that I never
lost
got lost.
on the road.
Yeah.
If we don't ask this, I'm going to explain. If you are lost, is it prudent to try to get as many skin plates as possible out into the woods?
No, you're shedding them already.
You're shedding them anyway.
Okay, alright. I needed to know, like, if you should just, like, you know, just come get me.
So it's a good question. I mean, people come to us, they're gonna hide for us, but they say, I wore all my scent lock clothing, you know, the
Oh.
hunters that have the
Of
scent
course,
lock
yeah.
for the deer. And it's like, yeah, you
It
just
doesn't work.
spend all that money for nothing, because the dog can smell you and the deer can too.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to figure out how to deer hunt so that you're, you know,
Not-
downwind of
Right.
the deer.
Do better.
Thank you.
I have two questions. We talked about breed differences. Are there gender differences amongst the breeds? And then secondly, in the case of that walking subject, like if I'm the lost person and I see a dog, is that dog identified? Or like, doesn't the walking subject try to follow the dog back or what?
They
happens?
could, and that would make it a whole heck of a lot easier, because I'm telling you, when somebody's walking that way, and my dog has found them from 500 feet away, and he comes back and he tells me, I am just out of breath, you know,
Yeah.
trying to close that distance. But they are identified with a vest. They will wear vests that say, you know, search and rescue on them. Was there another part that
I'm
identified?
just curious
Gender.
if they were, how the person responded to that animal, if they were covered still ambulatory, but it sounds like there's some potential that they might interact with the dog and realize help was on the way.
Yeah, and maybe, you know, maybe they would start calling out at that point.
Yeah.
I'm sure it would be sort of a reassuring thing for most people, not, you know, not all. But you asked about, you know, doing this if you're lost. What you want to do if you're lost is stop, and it's an acronym. So sit down. The T is for think. Just think about, well, do I know where I got off track? The O is for observation. You're gonna look around you. Are you sitting under a widowmaker?
Yeah.
Move. Is it raining and is that stream gonna come up? You wanna pick a place that you can sit and be comfortable for a while, and then you should start thinking about, do I need to light a fire? Do I need to make a shelter? And what can I do to make myself more visible?
That's Hive's garbage bag.
Mhm.
Yes,
Alright.
which you can fold up into a little square and put in your back pocket.
Right.
What's the succession failure rate for you guys in the past? Like you said, 24 years.
We do a lot of miles with finding nothing. It's-
So I actually thought that we had a higher percentage of people deceased rather than found alive. And I went back through all of our searches, and it's really about 50-50. But we do have cases that are unsolved, and they go into what the rangers call limited continuous. So it'll be the person's name, Thomas Messick, LC, limited continuous. So that means when any of the rangers are in that area, they're aware that somebody has gone missing there, and they're probably running their GPS so that they can give it to the local ranger to add to his map, which is covered with, GPS tracks.
There's one in Brant Lake,
Brant Lake.
7,000 acres of grid searching, not a sign.
And
Oh
no,
my
we
gosh.
haven't. He was an older hunter. He
80.
was hard of hearing. He
One
had
eye.
vision in one eye. He was ex-military and intelligence, right? And I was going to say this earlier and I forgot. Older people tend to survive longer than younger people because they have the skills, and we just play on our phones, right? So yeah, we do in the Adirondacks have people that we don't find. There's actually one not too far from here, Schuylerville,
The farmer.
Fritzy Drum.
Yeah.
There's one over here just by Saratoga, just north of Saratoga.
Yeah.
A few years ago. It's still in Bonin.
That's
Yeah, Fritzy Drum.
Drum, yeah.
Is that a database that's something that's available publicly?
The searches.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can sign up actually to get the email once a week from the Rangers, what they're,
I do, and it's very entertaining.
That's why I'm so interested by because I mean, if I were to walk out an area, it'd be neat if it was like, oh hey, that might be remains, but I kind of maybe know who it is. Be like, hey bud, I'm gonna call the people out.
For these people that are missing, have been missing for years and years,
Yeah.
you're not gonna find any remains other than bones.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No,
they'll
at least you wouldn't be so freaked out. You'd be like, oh, it might be old farmer.
yeah.
What's his name?
Drum.
Farm drum. Obviously. Anyways.
And they'll be, the phones will be dissipated
Yeah,
because the animals
spread.
will spread them.
Yeah. Wow. I did actually have one other question, but I needed to get that other one out. What is the preferred treat of search and rescue dogs? Like when you're doing find them,
Whatever
do you usually do a
whatever their
reward?
best
And
is.
what is that reward?
That's a really good question. One of our members just went to a seminar down in Florida that was called Pay That Dog.
Yes!
So
I love it.
we think about it as, paying, if you had to do a job that was, kind of difficult, you'd want to be paid really well for it, right?
Oh, heck yeah.
So it's not milk bones. Don't bring me your milk bones.
No, I
Don't bring me your milk bones
No.
to treat your dog
No.
that I'm trying to help you train. Steak,
Yeah.
chicken,
Like freeze dried or?
cheese.
No, the good
fresh?
stuff. Yeah.
Oh!
Oh
The
yeah.
stuff you want to
Okay.
eat.
Alright.
If we had steak, there's always part of it's, cut
Cut
off
out for the
and
dogs.
shaved.
I'll tell you a little story. A few years ago, my wife and another canine handler found a deceased person who'd been murdered,
Oh my goodness.
okay? And the day after we found that subject, we had a big victory party. That we found them, it was closure, blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
absolutely.
Somebody had been arrested. We ate hot dogs and hamburgers.
The
The
dogs,
dogs
had
had
steak.
filet mignon.
Oh
Okay? It was.
Oh, what a nice life for them. I mean, that's chaos. That's
Oh,
all.
and that was another thing I wanted to tell you too is, people wonder if, is the dog kenneled or, you do all this training and you give it to somebody else to search. No, these are our dogs. They're on the couch. They're on the beds,
Oh, when you also, I was gonna add, when the dog is wearing a GPS tracker and the trainer's wearing a tracker that can pick up the dog.
Oh,
So
that's
they're all
awesome.
running tracks that they can watch, the trainer can watch, the handler can watch.
Ooh.
So and that's something important to go back to the rangers where they'll download that and put that on their maps so they can see,
Oh, you can see where.
it'll all get laid out on maps. What's been
Ooh.
covered, what hasn't been, to what extent.
That's incredible. Wow.
If you see us at a trailhead on a Saturday training, you're more than welcome to come walk the trails yet. You might get a dog come up to you.
Oh, that'd be pleasant.
We usually tell you, just stand there for a minute and just stand there.
Yeah, just be
Yeah.
still so I don't have to run and run and run.
Just stand there because you've been found.
Right, and they'll be like.
So the whole idea is
"Let
at
me
that
tell."
point is ignore the dog. It'll go back, identify that they found someone, and then they come back to you. And once the handler comes in, everybody can get excited
Oh.
because they did their work.
So I was wondering if I might see somebody that my dog found that was not somebody that we actually hid, and it was over here in Camp Saratoga North.
Oh.
And somebody was hidden, and my dog came back and gave his alert, and so I said, show me, and and he brings me to this this couple that was hiking. It was an elderly couple, and I was thinking, well, maybe they're trail stewards or something. And I'll see them tonight. But they were very interested, in the dog.
Yeah. That's awesome. Wow. All the more reason to come hike about,
Oh yeah,
You might get
you might
a
get
rescue
found.
pup. Come up, say hi.
And anybody that wants to come and hide for the dogs, get a hold of Bob. He'll tell you how to get a hold of me.
Cool.
We're always looking for new
Fresh
people
blood.
for the
More people to smell.
fresh meat.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It's 10 or 15 below zero, it's a lot more,
No, that's very cool.
So
Thank
you guys want to see Zoe?
I want to
Yes.
see Zoe.
She's gonna do a runaway problem, even though she's graduated from that. We often return to the foundation because it's so motivating for the dog. So Doug has trained her for a bark alert, and he's been getting one bark from her, and he has decided that is not enough. So he wants 3 barks, and that makes a lot of sense because if your dog has worked all day, he's hot, he's panting. If you've trained for 3, you'll probably get 1. So when you see the dog come back, she'll probably give her first bark, but then you may see him actually not follow her, even though she's starting back, and he will ask again for. Or just, he'll be still and she'll be frustrated and we'll give him the bark.
Right.
So here's Zoe, come on in. She says, well, I got my vest on. I want to go to work. I want to go to work.